Like we're in.
Hello, how's everyone?
How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing all right. A little busy, getting ready for the meeting. How are you doing?
Doing good. Work's keeping me busy, so they say it's better to be busy than not, so it's a good thing.
Exactly. Stuff ready here.
I think Richard said he might be a few minutes late tonight.
Yeah, I seen that email as well. Have you been going by the new area there by the subway, the new roundabout? I haven't seen it yet. I really have been kind of avoiding it.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Hi.
Oh. No, I haven't been down by the roundabout too much there.
Don't go, it's a mess. Hi, Mitch.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mitch.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Wait for a couple of minutes here. Richard said he was going to be a little late.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I had to bike across town, but I made it in the rain, so.
Ooh, good job doing it in the rain.
Yeah, it's a bit frosty, actually.
They're talking about a hurricane coming here this weekend, but I don't think we're going to get it if it's this cold.
Is that what it takes? It has to be warm too?
I think so. That's what a lot of people say. They say.
I was wondering the same thing.
Well, I guess let's call the meeting to order then. Okay. And do we have any declaration of conflict of interest?
Not on this end.
No.
I wasn't here last meeting. Okay, and how about approval of the previous minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Yep.
You have to move it, right?
Second to approve. Okay. And approval of the agenda.
I'll move it.
Okay. Second. Next is bike-friendly Charlottetown draft network plan. Ladies and gentlemen, Mitch Underhay.
Hi, everybody. So just before I jump into this, I just wanted to ask, how long do I have on the agenda tonight? I don't think I've seen the agenda.
Oh, we got a lot of time.
Okay,
For
because the
you,
thing is,
we'll give you extra time.
okay, because I can talk about this for a long time, and so I just wonder if to what level do I control my my rant?
You got a lot of time.
Okay, well that's great. Okay, so I've got a slideshow here that I will walk through. Let me just see if I can share.
Margaret, are you traveling right now?
Yes, I am.
I think your microphone might be on with the car noise.
Awareness.
Okay.
I think there you go. Perfect. There you go.
That's great. So if you're driving, you won't be able to see the visuals. So I'll try to just keep that in mind as I go through. Can people see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Can you see like the full screen thing or just the like PowerPoint?
You can see the center slide and then the slides to the left.
Oh, okay. How do I just want to.
Yes.
This can I select it then. It's here. 1 second. If I disconnect the other monitor. Sorry, I wanted to go full screen here, and for some reason Teams isn't
There
letting me.
you go.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so it was the other
Yep,
monitor.
that's great.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to hear me out. We've been working on this for a little while as a group, as you know. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the stuff we've been working on and then show you our draft network plan by priority. And then we have lots of time to talk about it at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to run through just a little BFC, some background stuff, our outreach and advocacy project, some of the engagement work that we've been doing. Then we'll get into the network. I want to talk about our network goals, some of the principles, and then we'll get into the maps, which is, there's actually quite a few maps. And then there's a few takeaways, which I'll actually lead with. So we are an independent community group. So we're a local nonprofit. We advocate for safe, accessible, active transportation on PEI. You might notice that we've changed our name from Bike Friendly Charlottetown to Bike Friendly Communities, obviously based in Charlottetown, but you know, we expanded to Stratford and Cornwall, and then, you know, if any other communities, we don't want to be exclusive. And this is all based on kind of Josh Underhay's vision, my brother's vision, and his analogy for constructing a network of bike lanes is like an electrical grid. So if you have a piece of infrastructure that's not connected to anything else, it's kind of like an off-grid house. And so you really want to have all those wires connected for something to be called a network. So these are the kind of my key takeaways. I put the slide at the beginning because I really want to kind of frame the whole discussion around these 3 points. The first is transportation. The second is connection. The third is vision. So the thing, the baseline is that active transportation is transportation. I've got a helicopter and a boat and a bicycle as an icon because they're all just different modes of transportation. They serve different functions. And so, you know, anytime you're looking at infrastructure, you say, you know, does this infrastructure serve the needs of the people using it, period. And so that's kind of where this is coming from. And so active transportation doesn't replace all trips, but it surely can replace quite a few. The other is connection. So when we're talking about, you know, physical network upgrades, we really want to make sure that any new dedicated lanes connect to existing ones, and we build a network out. So every time we build a new network piece, it connects to an old one, thus the network grows. And then finally is vision. To make this whole thing work, we want to have a grand long-term vision that we can work towards over time. All the stuff that I'm talking about in this slideshow is a 10 or 20-year project. Like this is long-term planning. But I think that with a vision, we can work towards it opportunistically as funding arises. So let's just talk about quickly some other plans. There's a federal AT fund, there's a provincial AT fund, there's a PEI AT strategy, there's a PEI network plan that Uplands has got in draft form. Charlottetown is doing a strategic plan. They're redoing their official plan. There's plans for Eastern Gateway. Stratford's got its community campus. So there's all these other documents kind of floating around, these plans and things, and kind of bureaucratically, where does this all fit? Well, in all of these documents, the thing that is missing is the physical configuration of an AT network in the capital region. So you'll see in this AT plan map on the right, that's the level of detail that the provincial plan is going into. So it shows connecting to Stratford and Charlottetown, but once you're in town, the plan is kind of silent on what happens inside the municipalities. And that's by design, but it just means that there is a gap that needs to be filled. And so what we'd like to do is offer that gap to groups like you, and then maybe we tweak it a little bit, and then it gets adopted officially as a vision or something that we can work towards. Just briefly on backgrounds, I'm probably preaching to the choir in this group, but this is an important thing to do for a number of reasons. One is safety. So the more cyclists we have, it means the fewer fatalities per rider kilometer. So it means that, just the more people bike, the less likely it is that they will be hurt cycling. And that applies to all ages. There's a huge economic benefit. There's cost saving for the riders. And there's also a more difficult to calculate long-term healthcare saving with a healthier population. If we are just more active, we have fewer kind of knock-on health effects down the road. There's also environmental benefits. It does just reduce CO2. If we can replace some trips and put them on bike or on foot or rollerblade or scooter or whatever, that's a trip that's not in a car, and that's going to emit less. The other thing is it does allow for denser cities. So things like public transit and active transportation really lend itself to your kind of downtown, kind of a bit closer, more central cities. And having villages that are designed that way will enable that kind of transportation, and that kind of transportation will in turn enable denser cities, which are a lot more environmentally friendly. So there's kind of a feedback loop. So we're working on something right now called the Outreach and Advocacy Project. So this was funded by the Prince Edward Island AT Fund by the provincial government for us to do this work. And without getting into any of the details of the project broadly, what we want to do over about a year is understand the cycling barriers and incentives, what makes people tick, why they bike, why they don't. And we want to do that through surveys, public events, route rides, and pop-ups, which we'll get into more in a moment. And then we want to develop cycling skills in the community. So that's through events, like we've done some workshops on bike repair, wayfinding, just route rides, and then a video series that we're working on now to I don't know if there's knowledge gaps that can be solved by a video, that can answer questions in a local context, then perfect. And then finally, we advocate for change. So based on what we've heard, we want to make recommendations for infrastructure, policy, or programming to municipal or provincial governments or other stakeholder groups. So we want to understand, we want to develop skills, we want to advocate for change. And this project is funded through the province, which was really great. Here's just a little flash of some of the stuff that we've done fairly recently. We had a big event in Victoria Park this summer. On the top right, that's our summer student and I doing what we call pop-ups, where we just show up in different locations. I think that was outside Sobeys in Stratford. We did a couple Sobeys. Bottom left, that was the Newcomers to Canada ride. So we did a ride. There's a kid in the front. He just was making a pretty dumb face, but we thought it was pretty cute. So I included the photo. And then finally, in the bottom right is the ribbon cutting at the Hillsborough Bridge. And I'm sure you'll recognize a few familiar political bigwigs in that shot. So we've done some engagement this summer and before. So we've done a couple of public events. I'm sure you on this group are aware of some of the stuff we've done previously. We also did 2 surveys. One of them is currently open until the end of the month. We did that bike-friendly block party in Victoria Park. And we did 23 of these pop-up sessions. So this is a picture of a pop-up session. So we have this, we had our summer student or myself or a few other people, our comms or outreach officer as well. With this kind of portable stand, we talk people through what their journey on a bicycle is, what are the barriers and opportunities they hit along those. And then we record everything people say on sticky notes. And then we're able to look at all of those comments in a giant, big, scary Excel sheet and tease out what are the themes that arise. Because a lot of people say, unsurprisingly, pretty similar things. And so this is a way for us to prompt people to hear what they have to say. The other benefit of the pop-up is we go to them, right? We're outside Sobeys. We went to Upstreet. We were at Founders Hall, the Founders Food Hall, Charlottetown Farmers Market, 2 different Sobeys locations. And we did multiple ones in each spot, just specifically to try to avoid the kind of self-selection bias that a survey or a public event that's a bike related kind of lends itself to, because we wanted to ask motorists and we wanted to ask people who don't ride or don't see themselves as riders, because that's kind of the most important thing. We did a few group rides as well. So with all the comments that we did, I'm not going to go into the full analysis. We're not finished of all the analysis of all the comments, but what I did want to show you was each time a theme arose, we tagged the comment, and then we can make a pretty handy graph. So this doesn't tell you everything that was said, but this is just by theme. It gives you kind of a magnitude of what we heard, what we talked about. And by far, the biggest thing by theme was about bike lanes. People said they liked bike lanes, or they had complaints about particular bike lanes or the absence thereof. But all of those things were around bike lanes. Some of the other themes where people chose to cycle just because it's faster and convenient in town. A lot of people quoted limitations around weather or time of day or time of year. A lot of people talked about the, oh, am I still here? Heard a funny noise.
Yep.
Okay, great. A lot of people talked about the health exercise benefits, and that's one of the reasons why they choose to do it. Another one is parking. So that's either avoiding car parking, we don't have to deal with parking downtown, or bicycle parking, or maybe lack thereof. One of the reasons people generally don't cycle is if their trip involves a lot of cargo, whether that's people or stuff. So if you're dropping kids off or you're picking up groceries, you're less likely to cycle. There's also a lot of conversations about very particular roads and streets, kind of just safety and feelings of confidence. And, you know, there's a lot to tease out in there. Wayfinding, there's a lot of talk both from motorists and about motorists, and a lot of that's kind of like etiquette. Just confidence, recreation, rules of the road, and then bike repair. And of course, there's miscellaneous in there too, but that gives you a magnitude. So I think what I wanted to do tonight is why I want to show this is because this kind of justifies that we should focus right now on bike lanes, active transportation pathways, because there are a lot of factors that go into it that we know. But this, I think, tells a very clear story that one of the biggest ones is having a place to cycle. So what could that look like? So when we think about the network, let's not even look at the map yet. What we want to do is provide the greatest benefit to the most people for the least money. So when we say greatest benefit, what we mean is we want to have a cohesive network of dedicated paths. So this isn't just paint on the road. This on the right is a dedicated path. This was actually in England, but it's got a cycle lane and pedestrian way clearly marked. There are no cars here. The other main benefit is that we want to focus on purposeful trips, which I know this group has talked about before. So you want to make you basically want to replace a trip replace a bicycle. Replace a car with a bicycle for a trip that you would make anyway. So that's work or school, events, friends, shopping, all those things that you normally do, just put them on a bike. We want to get the most people. So we're not talking about experienced cyclists here. We want kids, we want all ages, and we want the network to be accessible. So whatever that looks like, if that's, mobility devices of any kind. We want to make the network intuitive. because it's all the same infrastructure and we can all share it. And finally, we want the least money. And one of the best ways to do that is by having a vision, having that vision of what we're trying to work towards. And that allows us to align our investments over time to maximize funding opportunities as they arise. So if we have the money and we can put it in a place, which side of the road should it be on? How should we do this intersection? Should we do this road or that road? All of those decisions become much easier when you already know what the final network is going to look like, more or less. So, yeah. And so in kind of designing the network, we've, I guess we hit upon some logic and some key assumptions. So we want to maximize the use of existing infrastructure. So that's old roads, parks, little cut throughs, and we want to connect to existing trails and paths first. We want to prioritize the connection to schools and jobs. Pardon me. And over time, we want to cover the entire urban area. So we don't want to have any major gaps. We want to kind of an even spread, and we want to integrate accessibility at every level. Our assumptions, and I call them assumptions. I think they're a bit stronger than that. But our assumption is that safe, separated bike lanes will drive up ridership. Another assumption is that cyclists will go approximately, 20% farther for a safer or more pleasant route. And the other assumption is that the network that follows should be built in the order of priority. So before I jump into the maps, are there any questions on anything we've touched on so far?
It all sounds really great so far. I'm really liking what I'm seeing. I did like that picture that they had of the, of the active transportation lane kind of having some separation.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only thing for me is, like, I know in the past, like, bike lanes and then kind of more progressive active transportation lanes. I noticed you've used the term bike lanes quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think for your organization and the public as a whole, I think more palatable is active transportation lanes. And I know it's something when I talk to people, because there's a lot of strife between walkers, bikers, and cars. And I know a lot of people are really happy to see lanes outside of cars. But there's also another dichotomy of bikers and people who are biking and, mobility being with feet or even with a motorized assistance vehicle for disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think the greater good would be served if your organization would be using the term and pushing active transportation lanes versus, specifically bike lanes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I hear from a lot of people. Like, that, there's different dichotomies between all kinds of different types of transportation, but it's just the greater good from a lot of people I talk to. And there are more people picking it up, especially since COVID has come around.
I think that's a good point. I find that I end up using bike lanes as a shorthand because when I'm talking to people who are like disengaged with the whole realm of active transportation, I kind of got to explain it every time, and I do. But I think it does kind of sneak into my vocabulary a little bit. And our goal as an organization certainly is coming from a cycling angle, from a novice cycling angle, with the hope that it catches everyone, right? But I definitely have been using bike lanes for shorthand, and I'll go through this presentation and make sure that it's bike lane is removed and replaced with active transportation.
I think it's really good if you could do that, and just the buy-in's a lot better, I find, from people too. Like when they hear active transportation, it's just different people doing different things, and it's all lumped in, but it's kind of not like you understand it. I don't have to.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, again, it's kind of a shorthand, but I'll maybe a little bit careless.
But no, this sounds really awesome so far.
Any other thoughts or questions before I jump into the maps?
No, I think it's good to amalgamate bike lanes to active transportation pathways. So that's it. It's smart to do that. I think it's good.
Cool. Yeah, because that's what, again, a lot of the, I don't know, different conversation we had around infrastructure is really, they're all shared pathways.
Yeah,
Right. Like
exactly.
you're, and I think I showed a picture earlier where there was just go back up for a second here because I like this. This was in England, and it was a cut through in a neighborhood that went right through the neighborhood, but it was not part of the road network. And the road network, a lot of the, there's a lot of little cul-de-sacs and windy little roads, and this cut straight through. So there was a bicycle side and a person side, but it was wide enough that you could do that. So I think that you share pathways, and then, there's ways to limit conflict between other road users too. But it's just painted, but the whole, like, I cycled through it and it was excellent. It was way better than going out on any of the main roads because you have basically an active transportation highway, for lack of a better word.
Oh,
So
I know.
that's great.
There was one other thing I was going to mention too, and I just didn't know if anybody has really brought this to your attention. But as far as like, I find a lot of times in PEI and sometimes the city, the heart's in the right place to put a pathway somewhere or a bike lane, but the maintenance of it and kind of why it's there sometimes seems to be lost.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really big thing too. Like the one on Hillsborough Bridge is awesome. And I'm sure, that's kind of the province's deal. So that will be properly kind of funded and hopefully snow cleared properly. My big thing is, people have good intentions with some of this stuff, but from what I've been told with the city, that they just don't have the budgets in the winter to make sure these things are cleared. So I don't know if that's something too, when you're looking at, it's because you had in the slide, for funding opportunities, if there was something that could happen, especially for the capital area, for funding for, snow clearing and some kind of priority snow clearing. If you're looking at any opportunities for funding like that, I think that would be really, really beneficial.
I could not agree more with that. I think that you get, this goes back to the idea of a vision, is that you get bike lanes built a little bit piecemeal, and even the Hillsborough Bridge, you've got to connect to Grafton, and on the Stratford side, it's kind of a bare minimum connection to the existing network. And I feel like by creating a really good network, you entice people to use it, and when they use it, it then justifies the maintenance fund. There's a bit of a chicken and egg problem there, right? Because people aren't going to use it if it's poorly maintained, but then once enough people use it, it will justify the maintenance money. But funding for maintenance is a problem because a lot of the provincial AT fund certainly is capital dollars only, right? And so I'm not certain if the federal one could cover ops stuff, but there is money out there, and I think that if we're able to tap into money for, say, capital projects, then what if we took some of the budget that we normally use from the city and put it into maintenance, right? There might be some way to move money around, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think if more people can become aware of that, in who's providing the funding, like government and whoever, because as you said, the more people use it, then the more visibility it has, and especially if things are active transportation pathways, that's very visible to everybody, not just one group. So I think you're right in that fact that if there's more people using these things, and we could probably get proper funding to keep these things maintained. I think it's such an important thing to have happen. So
yeah, I agree. Any further thoughts before I jump into some maps? All right, let's go. This will probably generate some discussion. So, okay. So firstly, let's look at the region. So I'm taking kind of the capital region. Let's orient ourselves here with this map. You'll notice a bunch of blue triangles. Each one of those is a school. I've also noticed some intersections. They're kind of a black box with an exclamation point. Those are problem intersections that we, might have to deal with AT lanes. And then I've got the road network on as a light gray, and then the existing AT lanes are darker, and they're by surface. So asphalt, gravel, or natural, that's like grass or mulch. And then the dotted lines are areas that are included in the present 5-year AT plan for the city of Charlottetown. And you'll notice that they're kind of all over the place and there's not too many of them. So that kind of, is the current planning process for a lot of these things across the whole island. It's a little bit case by case. And I think it's really important to zoom out and see the big picture. So the first priority from our perspective, is that within Charlottetown, we already have the spine of the network in the Confed Trail, and what we need are ribs. What we need are east-west connections. Let's zoom in a little. So I don't know if you can see my cursor at all here, but say this is Capitol Drive coming in here. So there's already a connection on the AT plan to connect this, but I'm not sure if that's actually the most important, because as a cyclist, I would much rather not bike up the Maypoint Hill, and I'd much prefer to go around by Beech Grove, past Charlottetown Rural, across the new UPI road into the trail. That is a pretty pleasant drive on a bicycle. That's kind of almost, but not quite there. And so that's a really good one. So that would get you all of Cornwall and Lewis Point to the trail. Over here, you've also got Towers Road. And if you go up past Mount Edward, it's important to go past Mount Edward all the way to Maple, because Maple is a great street that's already got nice wide lanes. So it's not a priority one, but I think connecting to it's important. There's a lot of schools in this neighborhood. Another major street farther south is Belvedere, all the way across, right from this park on the North River, all the way across past the farmers market and the trail crossing there, again, right by UPEI, all the way to the new Vogue Optical intersection, which we certainly hope will have an AT lane all the way around it. So that creates a nice east-west connection. And then about 500 meters down from there is another great one. So if you take Nassau up from, I think it's Edinburgh that it goes from in Brighton, and it goes all the way to that the KFC, Tim Hortons, McDonald's intersection at University, and then you cross University, then you are just steps away from the defunct road at Ravenwood. So there's an existing road. It's like 15 steps in, or you go through the parking lot around the side, but you connect to that road. And then you can cut right through the Ravenwood building. And there's a natural path that exists there now in here that's like packed dirt. But you can cruise through, and then you come out, I think it's Confederation Street right there. And there's a school right there as well. So you create this east-west connection parallel to Belvedere, but it's like half a kilometer away, which means it's not entirely redundant.
Sorry,
Sorry, does someone have a comment on that? No, okay, we can jump in again. Yeah, and so down here as well, this is a fun little route through town that I quite like as a crosstown route, and I think that this area of town really needs it. If you go from, again, starting in Brighton, if you go up Inkerman Drive, then you get right by the old Simmons Sportsplex, which again is going to get redone. And so it's a great opportunity to make sure that we include active transportation connections all around it. You can cut along Pond Street to Queen, and then you zip right along Summer Street. You go by Dairy Queen, and then you're right in line with the existing path at Orlebar Park. And at Orlebar Park, presently, you have to go through a gap in the fence, and it's a little bit weird to get onto the trail, but it would just be so easy to make that a straight shot. Like it's almost there. It's owned by the city. It could be, you got to move a fence gate, and that's it. And then you're there. Put a pickup truck load of gravel and pack it down. Could be pretty easy. And then all of a sudden you have another beautiful east-west connection right in the middle of town that goes by several schools. And again, connecting to the trail. And that road here, Orlebar, connects right to Birchwood as well. So that creates a nice connection to that school. And then finally, another priority one is we really should do Grafton Street. I know that there's an Eastern Gateway plan, but if there's any kind of modular solution with modular concrete blocks, or just fixing the gravel on the little half trail that's there, rather than dodging around a big spool of cable or something, that connection is extremely important, because what we've built right now is 3/4 of a bridge, but 3/4 of a bridge does not make a bridge. So we're so close. And so I think you see a lot of more experienced cyclists using it. But I think that if you had that connection done, then kids could bike from Stratford to Birchwood safely. And I think that's really important. A few little side things up here in Hillsborough Park. There's an intersection there with a cut through, not for cars, but just for people. And it's not really even set up for bikes. But I think if that connection were better, then the bypass AT lane would get a lot more utility, because right now it kind of goes along a highway, which it's great that it's there, but it doesn't really serve your origin destination points of like residential to like jobs or school. And so having this little throughway would help bring that into town a little bit. So this is this is what I think of as priority 1. So this is really your like, okay, let's build this. So then once you have priority 1, again, anytime you go to priority 2, it doesn't make sense to do anything in priority 2 until you've already done priority 1. So let's go to priority 2. So you'll notice that all of a sudden there's a lot more black lines on here, because effectively they already exist. For planning purposes in priority 2, we've already built priority 1. And so then it's a matter of following our same network logic of connecting to existing trails. And maximizing the use of those little cut throughs and things. And then, so in priority 2 now, we focus on some other spines to the network to kind of close and box it in. So let's look at this a bit closer. So we have our connections along Belvedere, we have our connections along Nassau and Summer. And now let's really take a look at North River Road. So this is in priority 1 because it's going to be a bigger ask. It's a bigger project. But I think anyone who lives or uses or goes by North River Road knows that it's a very major street for cars, but it's also, pardon me, cuts right through a residential area. And so having a safe way to do that, I think is important for everyone. The same is true of St. Peter's Road. We have this massive new, development out in East Royalty. You have a huge new intersection out there. You've got a lot of bike lanes that come in and they just end at the bike lane at the bypass with no good way to get into town, which is obviously where people are mostly going. So I think that, and anyone who's biked along St. Peter's Road knows that it's kind of a nightmare. And the painted bike lane leaves you stranded and abandons you when you need it most. And the same is true of Brackley Point Road. And then I've also got in here kind of a connection through Oak Drive right behind Stone Park, because that intersection, the new intersection at the bypass and St. Peter's Road, the infrastructure there is incomplete. Like if you were to bike from East Royalty into town, the bike lane literally just ends. There's no crosswalk and there's no curb cut. Like you can't go there. And then you've got to run this gauntlet of like 8 lanes of traffic. So it's that intersection as designed is not at all bike friendly, even with the kind of smattering of bike lanes that are there. And so for that reason, diverting active transportation over onto the overpass is a great alternative. And the overpass as it is right now has big high sidewalks, but it could be modified, much like the Hillsborough Bridge, to accommodate bikes a lot more easily. And then you could have that whole East Royalty neighborhood getting into town very safely. Once they cross the bypass, then they're at Stone Park. They could cut across. And again, we've already built the connection onto Towers Road. We've already built the connection to Maple. So you can go, right through that area of town, and you can use Brackley Point Road too. And then the last one here I'll point out is Fitzroy, which is an F word that we haven't been saying very much since the last time it was shot down. But I think it's important to look at that. There's a few options. There's Euston Street, even Grafton or Kent. But I think Fitzroy made a lot of sense the first time, and I think it still makes sense when you bike it. So that's kind of priority 2. So you'll see how we've built kind of these cross sections. Now we start to ring it around. So let's look at priority 3. So again, I just want to see, you'll notice as well that in Cornwall and Stratford, the network is also building out kind of at the same time. And it's kind of pulling more and more neighborhoods in. So in priority 3, we're looking at some of the, outer edge connections. There's a great connection from Upton Farm through the now defunct but still publicly owned Hurry Road, through Milton Vale Park up by the fire station to the Confed Trail. There's a great connection on Sherwood Road. That's where the trail almost connects to the Brackley Point bike lane, active transportation lane out by the airport. And then, finishing that connection along Brackley Point. We could do Maple, Capitol Drive, the last bit of North River Road, and just kind of infill some of these areas that we've kind of missed before. So we made the ribs, we made the outer box. Let's just zoom in here into Charlottetown. And now we're kind of just infilling those areas and also going out a little bit to the outside. Priority 4. So this again focuses on a lot of the outer regions in terms of, expanding geography, pulling more people in from the outside, but you're pulling them in to a very robust network because you've already built a really solid grid inside the town. The other thing I put here, priority 4, you'll notice, is University Avenue, right down the middle. So this has come up, as an AT thing, but I've only got it as priority 4, and this is up for debate. But again, we have the spine of a bike network already, and that's the Confed Trail, and it makes more sense from my perspective to focus on the ribs before putting another spine that's parallel and very close. So not that it shouldn't happen, because I think it absolutely should. University is the commercial draw of the city, there's no doubt. But in terms of accessing it, people could access it from the Confed Trail and then using east-west bits to get to the commercial places that they want to go. Now, that said, this is where the opportunistic funding comes in, because if University is scheduled for an overhaul anyway, it does make sense to put the bike lane in when that overhaul is scheduled, even if it's kind of a lower priority. And that's where the vision part comes in, because it does allow us to play with this a little bit and say, well, this is a slightly lower priority, but we're doing it now anyway. We have the money, so let's include it while we can. I figure that might be one of the more contentious choices, is prioritizing or deprioritizing University. But anyway, you'll notice there as well, it goes right down town, and then you have the opportunity to kind of cut through Queen's Square one way or the other. There's a few different paths through there, widening nice in those to accommodate people going through. Like there's a spot right in between the theater and the Province House, where there's a very narrow corner with kind of a stairwell and a rail. And I feel like you could modify that a little bit to, just a little bit more traffic flow through there. Little things like that could go a long way. Finally, priority 5. So at this point, again, this is years down the road, right? But at this point, we have a good, robust network in the city. And now it's time to fill in some of those streets that might have not been in as high a priority because maybe they're quieter streets, maybe they're a bit more rural, kind of on the outer edges. But then, these are all things that we can upgrade, pardon me, later in the process that really kind of bring the network up, but are little infill projects at the end. So now I'll show this, which is the reason why I broke it down, is because I made this map first. And I was like, well, this is a lot to look at. But after having gone through that, I hope this makes a bit more sense in terms of what we're thinking. And you'll notice on the right, priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the existing lanes, and then the problem intersection, color coded as well by priority, so that you, do things in tandem. So there you have it. That's our network discussion. Again, I just want to, just before opening up to conversation, I really, really want to drive this home, the idea of transportation, connection, and vision. Active transportation is transportation. And I think talking to people and hearing what they have to say. I want to demonstrate that there is a large constituency, there's a large body of people who are underserved by our current infrastructure. And so, like any piece of infrastructure that isn't doing its job, we have to look at it and say, how do we fix this? And so by applying the same logic that we do to roadways, that we do to AT lanes, I think we just have to operationalize this, and just it becomes normal that we, spend money on this in the same way we spend money on roads. It's the exact same thing. There's nothing fundamentally different about it. And as we do that, we have to focus on connections. We have to finish the connections whenever we build something. We have to go the Hillsborough Bridge. We have to make sure there's a high quality connection to Joe Giz Park and the trail there, rather than leaving a 200-meter gap. We have to finish those connections to really make this network come alive. And that takes the vision of knowing where we want to be in the future, and then picking away at it and working towards it with funding when we can. So transportation, connection, vision. And that's it. That was it. Thank you very much. And what do you think?
I think it looks really great. Super comprehensive. Definitely a huge amount of thought put into it, which is nice to see. When I talk to people, because people know I'm on the council, and they've heard kind of rumblings throughout the city of University Avenue.
Yeah.
I know that excites a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
out of a lot of the things, like, want to hear, are they putting anything at Towers Road? I'm like, I wish they would. That's a small piece just for safety. But the University Avenue thing really pushes a lot of buttons for people in a positive way. So I know it's further down on the list, but I honestly think if there's funding and if that can happen, because that's slated to go all the way down to Euston Street, I think that's like a huge win.
It's a huge win.
Yeah, as far as Fitzroy Street goes, I live on Fitzroy Street. I was one of the people that was against it, not for the fact I don't like cycling because I'm a cyclist. Not for the fact that I don't think it's a good idea. I do, but the plan they came up with and the time frame they were trying to do it and the lack of funding they were doing it with was so underwhelming and pushed so hard. It was a terrible idea in the way it was represented. They were trying to access $500,000 of funding. You need millions and millions of dollars on the street to do it properly, and I think that's what you want is a proper thing done.
Yeah.
And at the time, and they wanted to eliminate 175 parking spots. That's 175 parking spots in the downtown core and residential parking. People were very mad. There were people, they were eliminating parking outside of churches. Old folks who need to pull into a parking spot to get into their church are very upset. So things like ADL were not consulted. ADL has big trucks coming and going.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
There was a lot of problems with this, and it almost seemed like somebody had an agenda that they were trying to push through rather than doing the right thing.
Right.
The other big thing about it at the time, and nobody ever talked about it, since then and now, active transportation lanes, again, are palatable, right? Bike lanes aren't palatable because when people heard that word, all they heard was, I'm losing my parking, I'm losing my church access, it's going to be terrible for my business, right?
Yeah.
So the thing we've looked at here, and I've kind of said it in some of our meetings before, when you look at a street, what do you have on both sides of the street? You have a sidewalk on either side of the street. Well, do you need two sidewalks? My opinion, you don't. I would wholeheartedly support on Fitzroy if the plan was to rip out one sidewalk on one side and put in an active transportation lane all the way down. And that solves all the issues. No parking lost, businesses continue, residential parking is there. I mean, there's so many benefits to it. And these sidewalks need repaired anyway. So
Big time.
you're going to have to spend money. Why not put in an active transportation? So.
Yeah, no, I think, and this is where, again, like for this map is at a high level, and I don't think that it's, I mean, like we can get really specific, but I don't.
Oh, we still there?
Really
Yeah, you can.
return.
Great job.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. From a BFC, like from Bike Friendly Communities as an organization, there's kind of a diminishing return in us being really prescriptive in where things ought to be, because ultimately it's not our call. What instead I'd like to do is focus on like the big picture, zoom out and say there should be a connection here. And really, at the end of the day, if it's Fitzroy or Euston or Kent or whatever, it doesn't really matter, provided that it does create that connection, right? And so in terms of the street design, there's a lot of different ways that could happen. One thing.
I
Oh,
think
sorry.
it's-
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I think it's huge how it matters, because down here is not like any other place in town. Like, for example, on Fitzroy Street, my house, it's a 2-lane street. Well, it's probably like a 1 3/4 lane street here at the most in the good times. When winter hits here, it's less than a street sometimes. And you have snow removal, you have people trying to get through like, it's crazy in the winter here. And a lot of the lens that's been looked at this is looking at it in the best time of year, with out all of these things, don't even bother thinking about the 175 parking spots or ADL or the older folk trying to get to church. Just trying to get down the street itself is a really hard challenge, and those things don't seem to get looked at. Like, a lot of people, again, awesome idea to have some kind of lane down here, right? But at the same time, it's the nuances that make it, right? That's what people buy into, and they're like, yeah, I can get behind this 100%, right? So I think those little details, and again, like you said, you guys can only advocate, you can't make the decisions. And I'm just hoping that, I see you guys as a positive group. I hope we can all, have you guys advocate for us to do the right things, rather than, kind of what was done in the past of we were just doing things because it's kind of a thing to do. Somebody's got a cat.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. One of the problems we encountered when we talked about Towers Road is politics. It seems that the way things are done is according to making sure each councillor gets a share of the development in his or her ward. It absolutely makes sense to do things the way that you're talking, to think about a vision, to think about what people need, rather than to do this sort of piecemeal approach, which is what the city has been thinking about. Their 5-year plan that we saw has no underlying vision. It's a series of disconnected interventions, which will not actually improve life for cyclists at all. They'll just be little sections that people can use. So how do you go about balancing the politics of all of this with the need for actually a structure which has a vision underneath it, which will improve ridership?
Frankly, that's the benefit of being a third-party group, is that we can say, this is the vision. And so politically, having no particular council affiliation, hopefully will give us the strength to show this vision. And then if there's enough social buy-in and enough political buy-in, then, and if this vision is adopted, then councillors can demonstrate progress by pointing to this vision, which, again, there needs to be a critical mass of social buy-in before that happens. And so that's where the third party group comes in. Someone like us, is we can say, hey, everyone, what do you think of this? And if people are like, that's stupid, we hate you, we can take the flack, because politically we're not associated. And that's the benefit. And then, but if we're successful, then we can hand it over to the politicians and say, run with it, because you've got the impetus, and that we can demonstrate a constituency to do it. At least that's where I'm coming at it, because frankly, that is, you're hitting the nail on the head. That is the problem, right? How do we get past the politicking and to the idea that, like, hey, we need a cohesive vision here. Yeah.
So we are meant to be the mayor's task force advising the mayor, and I think we would advise him to do something like this. But of course, we've got municipal elections coming up, and I think we've only got one more meeting after this one before we're disbanded and then reconstituted at the pleasure of the next mayor, which may be the same mayor, or maybe somebody else. I don't know if it's appropriate to mention this, but is it an election issue?
I'd certainly like it to be, but I'm third party, right? I'm an advocacy group.
Yeah, we're just advising the mayor, and maybe we should
Mm.
advise the mayor to adopt something like this.
I think I think it would go a long way, and I don't know exactly where, or the mechanism to enshrine it, but I know that the official plan is open right now. And that's being reviewed. I've done a few rural municipalities official plans, and so in the other consultation, I like to do an active transportation plan. And in fairness, it's not the focus of the plan. It's Appendix F, but it's in there. Right. And so it's somewhere, it's enshrined. So I don't know if this group could recommend that this or something like it, network plan be adopted in the official plan as like appendix, whatever. Or if there's some other mechanism, or whether the best thing to do is for us to publicly say, hey, everyone, candidates, incumbents, here's a vision. We'd really like to make this an election issue. I'm not sure what the best play is, because politics often seems to be the impasse.
Yes.
I mean, anytime I talk to the mayor, he seems very positive about active transportation and being out there and healthy and getting around. So I mean, he's a great ally for that, and he really wants to do the best. I think. Anytime
Oh, I agree. I agree. He does. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you'll know, in some of the quite a few of the pictures of the bike rides, he's there. He went for a bike ride with me one day last spring, and it was 10 degrees and raining sideways, and we biked all around town. And to his credit, like I said, hey, do you want to cancel? He's like, no, we're doing this. I was like, great. So, he is very supportive, but he's not the only influence, right? So, I really appreciate his support, and now it's just a matter of how do we kind of broaden that support? How do we take this vision? And again, the precise configuration of the network, and the precise priorities. Nothing's going to be built that's going to look exactly like this, but I think it's important to have something that we're aspiring towards.
One step at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
So have you guys looked at as an option, like when you have a road with two sidewalks, one sidewalk is a sidewalk and the other is converted into active transportation?
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing it. I think it's kind of case by case, because you, on some roads, like say like North River, I think it makes more sense to have, one going either way. On the Hillsborough Bridge, where you've got it, basically a bi-directional lane on one side, and the same on Riverside Drive, and then you connect to the path at Joe Giz. Well, maybe it makes more sense for the one on Grafton to be one side of the road, cross together, one side of the road, and then you're at the trail. So I think that there's different ways of designing it. I presented to this group, but it was actually probably not a lot of the same individuals, in 2020, and I'll bring up a slide. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to bring up this slide because I'm actually in Halifax at the moment, and I've been biking around town here, and this is what they use here for a lot of bike lanes. Like there's one on Hollis, there's one up by Gottingen, and there's one on Brunswick. But they use modular concrete curb sections, and then parking on the outside, and then vehicle traffic. And so as a result, you've got a bi-directional lane, on one side of the road, but it's modular. So it requires a lot less design to begin with. And then if you do make it permanent, you can just forklift those pieces to another location. And I think it's a really smart way of doing it. And it creates the physical barrier that you need relatively cheaply. So I had done a bunch of cost estimates and stuff back in 2020. But again, I feel like trying to be too prescriptive doesn't necessarily work. And so I think we need to focus on aspiration, and then the precise design of each individual road will probably be an engineer's job anyway.
Because the thing about engineers, and we all know that roundabout they're putting in by the subway, they didn't purchase enough land for it. They were looking
Yeah.
at years. Engineers did that, and it wasn't until people at the 11th hour scream about it, and it's still not right. Like that, there are millions and millions of dollars, and that should have an active transportation lane, and it should have something for people to walk on. And you have to go one way. Like it's the best
Yeah.
that people could come up with in a short period of time, but it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been like that, right?
Agreed.
So my whole thing here that I'm trying to drill home to everybody that will listen, and this comes back from the whole Fitzroy thing, is that the devil is in the details. And I think it's so important to make sure, especially like areas like downtown, and this is not just Fitzroy Street. Again, we have a modern thing they're building right now, and that people were consulted in the media about, and they still didn't get it right. And they're spending millions and millions of dollars, and that's good. That roundabout's not going to be changed. That's there for stone for the next 50 years, right?
I know.
So my whole thing
Yeah.
on Fifth Street, like, hey, you guys want to put a lane down here? I'm all for it. Like right now, it's a great lane. People bike down here all the time. The street is not that busy. But if we're talking about, a separated lane, one sidewalk needs to be ripped out, and they have to put in an active transportation lane, and like that will work for everybody, right? And that's the kind of thing. And it's not to say that's going to work everywhere in town, but there are other areas in town that I think that kind of method, especially if they're building new neighborhoods. Like I know something we had mentioned to the city was,
Yeah.
well, you're building a new neighborhood. Why is one side of the street sidewalk and the other sidewalk? Like a new neighborhood should have active transportation on one and sidewalk on the other. So I totally agree with you. There's not one solution for everything, but I think the details are so important before, and the other thing too is like when people hear a plan, they kind of think, oh, well, this is the plan, right? The refinement, the details have to be worked out before it's presented to the public. And, and if it is presented, give them the idea that this is not final. Because that's the other problem, right? Like if a lot of thought doesn't go into it and these little details aren't looked at, when people get it, they're not going to want to do certain things because immediately their backs are up. So,
Yeah.
So how do we get around this? How do we sell the idea of a vision? And I know like even an aspirational one, a kind of a high level vision, knowing that there's a lot of details that need to be worked out, because in this, like we're a nonprofit, and as you can tell, we've put some time into this over the last many years. There's a lot of hours pouring over maps and just beating the street, talking to people. But we're at the end of the day, we're a nonprofit, not an engineering firm. And so, I like, how do we get this to the point where like you guys are happy, the councils are happy, the staff's happy, like,
I think you've got a perfect opportunity with the election, but the way to do, I would think, is to try and get candidates and the mayor to commit to developing a vision for an integrated network. And I think those are the keys, because whatever the network looks like by phase 5, if it's all done according to a vision of connection, as opposed to piecemeal according to political exigencies, then you're going to get something which is usable and which accommodates people and allows them to do the kind of trips to work or to school or to the grocery store or whatever, as opposed to just recreation.
Yeah. I think that comes down, and it might solve some of the engineering problems as well, is that active transportation means transportation. And so a lot of times in Public Works and Highway Act documents, you'll have regulations under the act, and it'll spell out, these are the stipulations for road width, speed limit, turning radius, all these kinds of things, intersection design. And I think by enshrining AT in the same regulatory framework, then you do have, say, traffic engineers who look at it and say, yep, okay, we got to tick those boxes, we got to tick these boxes. How do we do this? Here's the constraints. Go. You know what I mean? But we just have to we have to make sure that active transportation is like pulled into those regulations, and it's just normal. It's just as normal as we have traffic lights. you know.
Anytime there's new
Um,
development, there needs to be AT, and anytime there's major roadworks, that needs to be seen as an opportunity to stick in AT, whether that's what Jason was saying, taking out a sidewalk, whether it's putting in those concrete barriers or something. But every time that there's roadworks done, because it's got to be comparatively cheaper if you're taking up the road anyway, than just to revisit the whole thing and decide what do we want this thing to look like for the next 50 years. And
I agree. I agree, Richard. And I just wanted to bring up the comment of in Ward 3, Barb McLeod's running in this ward. And there was a post regarding active transportation that she sees the biking lanes or the biking symbols, but she doesn't see the biking lanes. And I was pleased to see that because she's running in the ward that I live in. But I do think that it can be gather strength, Mitch. If you know, we have someone that wants to take it on. I have advocated for an AT lens on any type of concrete that goes down, you know, or lane. Like we have to have an AT lens that looks at it. And I know we want it. I just not sure there's kind of like your priorities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that this is a huge priority. If we want people to, if we want to gain the trust of users, it needs to be safe for people from 8 to 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look at other countries, like at 8 years old, they can get on their bike and travel very safely and know they'll not come in contact with cars. I think we have an exceptional opportunity here to be able to do the same thing. But I was very pleased to read that that Barb McLeod had posted that, and that itself would kind of, you know, I would lean into that with her if she wanted to take that on.
yes,
I
I
would
read
love
her
to.
stuff and I thought that was good also. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's on everyone's radar. It's another thing to actually come out publicly and state that. And I know it was in conjunction with a comment around sidewalks too. But I think, you know, she'd be a great person to speak to really hear what the task force has been doing and where we want to go, along with the bike communities.
Cool.
This,
Yeah.
it's inevitable that the next couple of years will start having governments, both municipal and provincial, trying to do something about affordable housing. Probably one of the solutions will be build more building, and given that land is cheaper further out, probably some of this new building will be done further out. But these are going to be people with lower incomes anyway, and straddling them then with all of the costs which go along with the car sort of neutralizes many of the savings that they might realize from living downtown. So all of the thinking around the affordable housing, whatever solution the city and the province come up with, needs to have an AT component in there. And there will be some sort of process that the city and the province get together on.
I was
That's a good
thinking-
angle, Richard.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about the election and all of that, and I was wondering if someone could contact maybe Compass, because they usually have every mayoral printed down, and if that could be a question posted to them, or if, I don't know, if we got a hold of the paper and put that as a question out to them. Like, I think that's the only way that, if we're going to use the election, like we talked about, that could be like a step. What do you guys think?
One thing that I would caution is that we actually serve the current mayor and the current council, so we can't really be political. I think we are not saying anything that we haven't said before by endorsing the idea of a vision that Mitch was advocating, along with sort of some sort of idea of connectivity. But we shouldn't, I don't think, get involved in anything that is at all political like that. But that's not to say that bike-friendly communities couldn't organize a mayoral debate or a candidates debate on what does active transport look like in the future of Charlottetown. And there is no reason that members of this committee as private citizens couldn't show up.
Very good
Well, it's
ideas.
not political if you're just spreading public awareness. Yeah, it's around that time political, but you're just spreading the awareness of it, of the need for it. You know what I mean?
I guess I hear what Richard's saying with regards, we are actually entitled, the mayors.
True.
We work for the mayor, so that's what this committee's all about. So I agree. I think we're giving Mitch maybe a couple of ideas that we could definitely be a part of as private citizens. And if you needed some people in the audience that had to ask a question.
It's a good idea. Yeah, should it be like an event, or like, should it just be like a letter to the editor and a CBC interview and see if the Guardian will run something, or Compass?
If it was me, I would do everything and realize that, say, 30% of it will be successful. But
yeah, that's maybe generous too.
I mean, it's a lot of work
no.
for your time frame. It's a lot of work, but I think it would be a good bang for your buck to get some things on the table and people thinking about it.
Yeah. No, or yeah, that's a very good point. And I don't know if this group wants to, recommend that it seems like it kind of goes into bureaucracy land, because I know that this group has already recommended all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely preaching to the choir here. Yeah, I really appreciate that this group exists and that you tackle these issues.
Well, we appreciate you exist, your group.
So our job is sort of to liaise between groups like you and the mayor's office. It would be perfectly acceptable for you to say that you have presented before this committee, because that's completely true. I don't think we can endorse your plan, because that's got to come from the mayor.
Right.
Or not. But it would not be inappropriate of us to say, we just heard a presentation from bike-friendly communities, and we were exceptionally impressed, in particular by the 5-phase plan, the idea of the ribs to the spine, and the importance of connectivity and network building.
Well, it definitely could be put in the minutes for all the, it's going to be put in the minutes for sure, but it would be nice to have something more official, maybe to go to the mayor. I don't know.
I can also, like, I was thinking after this, I would just send out this, like, I don't know, there's a few slides I'll cut because they were just like explanatory, but I'll just like send out a PDF to this group on the invite. So, and I don't know if you want to append that to your minutes or something, but that's what.
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea. Yes, so then they're in the city records.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of have a question for you, Mitch, and it's about the vision. Like, I know we kind of established that it's an active transportation pathway so that more than bikers can go on it, but like, it sounds like the majority of it is going to be bikers. And just how do you, for this the big pathways, if somebody else, maybe it's a lady on a stroller, like, there needs to be some kind of etiquette that is involved in it as well, so that it runs in a peaceful way, that you don't have fast bikers going down trying to move out of the way for the lady in a stroller or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I think that has to be reviewed and looked at as well. If it
That's something. So again, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff tonight, but in the outreach and advocacy project that we're doing, what we want to do is come out with recommendations for infrastructure, which is what we spend most of our time talking about tonight, policy, which came up a little bit, and then programming, which we haven't really touched on. But that is a programming thing. That's an education thing to kind of drive home what are the etiquettes. As someone with a stroller, if you've got headphones in, don't drive in the middle of the path. Drive on the right. As a cyclist, when you're approaching that person, maybe slow down, ring your bell, call you're on your left, go around them. You know what I mean? Like there's etiquette things that you can do that honestly most people do, and people on the island especially are like pretty friendly. So I'm not really that worried once the culture rises. You will get some conflicts, but I think that's where kind of education and normalizing certain etiquette practices come in. And that's where things like a video could do that, or working that into like driver's ed training, getting into schools, right? That's kind of like as a little curriculum thing, rules of the road, how to be a pedestrian, how to be a cyclist, how to use a stroller, those things. How do these people share space is really what it comes down to. But so in this presentation tonight, I did really intentionally focus on the infrastructure bit. But what I'd like to do is our final like plan recommendation is going to look a lot like this, but then with other bits. That this will be like the infrastructure chapter, and then there'll also be policy things like where we can work AT into just T, and then how do we do etiquette? Like how do we do some of this programming stuff? Is that a government thing? Is that a school thing? Is that a BFC thing? Is that a cycling PEI thing? Like who needs to do it? But that's the kind of thing that we want to come out with.
All right.
And the other thing I should say as well is that we as a group are coming at it from the cycling angle. That's our like primary, that's where we're coming from. We want to share it, but that's the angle that, and so there might be other groups with slightly different takes on it, and ultimately, interesting to be balanced. But we are aware, our logo is a bicycle, right?
I wanted to say, Mitch, I really understand the bigger picture, and I really, really like that. I'm thinking, or the question I have, just my curiosity is piqued here. If you could, wave a magic wand and you could see one thing like that, could change and the impact would be great on many, which one would you pick?
The active transportation as transportation. Because imagine for a second that I was an automobile advocacy group and I was trying to advocate that we should design our streets for cars, right? Mm-hmm. That's absurd in the modern context, right? That's completely absurd because we already do that. And so if we could basically render this group obsolete because it is just a default, that you obviously include active transportation with every project and you operationalize it in every regulation, and then it just, if you have an intersection that doesn't serve all road users, you just fix it like you do any other intersection. I think if you could switch that policy and also everyone's mindset around it, then things would change tomorrow.
Okay, so the AT lens, having that on every new construction or refurb, whatever we're doing. So that's there. Is there anything else, like one little thing you think if we could, do something to support, to move forward?
From your perspective, from the task force perspective?
Yeah. That was yours. I guess now I'm asking you what would you suggest for us? And if it's something little, let's hear it.
Yeah, I think that perhaps adoption, maybe the official plan is a good time to have these conversations because the way that planning works is you have your official plan and then you have your land use bylaw. So it's the same as the act and the regulations. You have the purpose and then the actual like nitty gritty. And so statements of intent in the plan are a way of enshrining things in law, basically. And so having a statement that we need to adopt a vision, and maybe it's this vision, maybe it's a different vision, but a vision of a cohesive network, I think is really key. And then also a statement that is saying that when you look at transportation, it's not about moving cars, it's about moving people. So
Right.
sometimes that's buses, sometimes that's bikes, sometimes that's on foot, sometimes that's whatever those things are. But if you enshrine a statement of intent in the official plan to broaden what transportation means, then when you interpret the regulations, you have to look at the intent, right? And then maybe the regulations have to change because they no longer quite fit the intent of the act above it, right?
Okay.
And I think,
Mhm.
and so from a municipal standpoint, there's some, because Charlottetown owns its own roads, right? So it would have its own regulations surrounding road work design. And I think that putting real guidelines for AT in those regulations would force people to include it in every decision that's made.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
Right.
I'll even maybe write that in an email when I send the PDF out.
I think that would be a great idea. So the statement of intent,
Yes.
is there anything else that you can think of, Mitch, that, that perhaps this group, would be able to, try to move forward?
I mean, I guess recommending to the mayor that this vision is a good starting point. And again, I'm not trying to just push my own vision to say, to the exclusion of all others, but there isn't another cohesive vision being proposed, so might as well start with this one.
Okay.
And so to say, hey, Mr. Mayor, we heard a presentation. This made a lot of sense. You should adopt and endorse this. And then, of course, there's going to be steps, and maybe it'll go into other people's hands, and that's fine. But just having that kind of like a bit of a top-down support can kind of move things along sometimes.
Okay.
Does anybody know, related to what Mitch was just saying, what the timeline for the strategic plan is? It seems to me an odd time to do one just 2 months before an election. Is it going to be passed before the election? Does anybody have any idea?
No.
No.
I don't, but we can look it up on social media.
Right.
Is that where we find it, Barb?
I can't recall.
What?
Is that where we would find it on social media?
There is a group that you can tap into, and you can find out lots of things. I think I shared it on our last meeting.
Okay.
I think I shared that site. Yeah.
I have the minutes here, and I don't think I included that. I apologize, Mark.
Okay. I'll just have to look it up. But yeah, there's
Maybe
you can go see it. You can actually, I think,
Yeah.
go see it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you get that info, if you just send it to me in an email,
Yeah.
I'll include it within the minutes this time.
Okay. Is there anything else, Mitch?
No, I don't think so. I was just taking notes. I'll send this group an email with this presentation attached, and then a few comments that we just made as well. I can't say enough how much I appreciate this. This obviously I put a lot of time and thought into it, and it's not just me. There's a whole group kind of behind this. So we really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight, and I really appreciate your support and comments. So I can't thank you enough.
We
Well,
really
thank you for
listening to you.
taking time out of your afternoon, your evening.
Absolutely. Thank you
Good
so much.
job.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, I'll sign off then. But have a good night, folks, and thanks again.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Moving next would be infrastructure communication and implementation plan follow-up. Is that?
I think that's what we just did, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
I kind of think that's what it was. Okay. So reporting from department liaisons. Do we have a public works report?
I'm sorry, I don't have one. I didn't contact Scott. The only thing that happened was that I sent him an email that said that we wouldn't be needing to meet with him personally. As I said in my email, I didn't see the point when we only have one more meeting until we're disbanded, and then
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
so no, I don't have a report. I apologize.
Okay. And how about Parks and Rec?
Yeah, nothing to report here. I did follow up with Nancy's suggestion to get the mayor to publicize some of these trail stuff. Where was it? Andrews? Yeah, Andrews Park. Gosh, I can't remember what it was called. Yeah, you know what I mean. I followed up with the mayor, and he said that he would do something. I haven't actually heard anything about it since then, but that's as far as it got.
Okay.
What's the name? Just a sec. What's the name of the park again, Richard? Sorry.
It was Andrews something or other. I can't remember. Gosh.
Oh, it was Andrews is fine. I'll look it up.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Great. And how about police?
I don't have any reports from police.
Neither do I.
And cycling PEI.
Nothing on that front. Just their newsletters keep everybody pretty much informed these days. So
Okay. And bike friendly communities. We kind of.
Yeah, I don't think we've got anything else from them.
Yeah. That was pretty well the main focus tonight.
Yeah.
Does anyone moving forward? Does anyone have any new business?
don't think so. I guess the election comes up in November, so we'd have one more meeting after this, I guess. Is that
I think
correct?
I think that was the plan. Yeah.
So
Now,
when-
I don't know if it would be possible, but I wonder if we should get like the mayor, like it's his task force. I wonder if the last meeting that we have, if we should ask for him to come by, or I don't know if it might be a good thing. I don't know.
Would we consider like wanting to meet in person? Maybe would that be?
Actually, that's quite a good idea, because then we can give him a summing up final report sort of thing. And one of the things in our summing up final report to the mayor was we just heard this thing tonight, and we think you should take action on it. And politically speaking, it might be useful to him in terms of votes and so on. But I'm sure
Just wanna
he's got
the
these
calendar, see what day that is. Our next meeting here.
is it after the election?
No, the election's on
The
what,
18th.
7th of November?
October 18th.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm a whole month ahead or behind here. Oh,
You're in a time machine.
I am like thinking next November. Where will we meet?
I mean, there is the boardroom at the city hall where we used to
Yeah.
do things. If we wanted to meet there, and
Do I have to contact Doug to book it?
I think so. Yeah. that
Yeah.
would be-
Oh,
but
definitely
maybe
have.
if he could maybe confirm with the mayor if he has some time. 'Cause I know sometimes too they've moved the meeting when they had other things going on. So maybe it'll be a Tuesday or a Wednesday if we can all if he can get us
Yeah.
a date in the room, then we'll know.
If we're meeting in person on the 18th, I can't do it. I can only do it online. But
what about with the
the
19th?
rest of the week is open.
The 19th?
That would work in person. Yeah.
Yeah. Why try to shoot for that?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I will do a letter up to, or an email to Doug asking for the 19th then for the boardroom, and if he could forward an invitation to the mayor.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay, I guess we'll see everybody online before then, or we'll hear from each other anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well that's the adjournment of the meeting then. See us all on the 19th.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, we probably have to like the time of the 19th. Like everyone here probably wants to do it in the evening. Is that
Yes. For me,
yeah.
it is.
Okay.
like
So-
6 o'clock. Well, is everybody okay with 6 o'clock still, or would you? Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Now
This
for-
when I was talking to Doug about whether we wanted to go back to in person, because the committee used to be sort of lunchtimes in person, but I think many people would not be able to make that.
We never met at lunch.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was always in the evening at 6
Oh,
o'clock.
was it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
If we're talking about summarizing things for the mayor, I know that Mitch is going to send us that presentation, so probably should we have it printed out for him, like the presentation, so he has it?
Can't hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Version
don't
of it.
need to duplicate what Mitch just did, but we did need to sort of talk to him about what we've done in general, and then also say that we're really impressed by the idea of connectivity and long-term planning and network building, which were Mitch's 3 big takeaways, all
Well,
of which makes sense.
Yeah, I just think if he has some sort of, he
Oh,
understands,
absolutely, yeah.
he could go to YouTube as well. It doesn't have to be printed, but as long as he has something we are speaking to.
It's
Just-
always handy to have people go through papers and sort of say, oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
All
Okay,
right,
thank you, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
later.
Yeah.
Bye.